made up answer. No, I think in a free market, I could go sell that business to anybody and I could advertise that business and they would buy it. Here, I'm constrained by the fact that you've got to be chosen by OLCC. And so I want to sell my business. OLCC says, here's the person that can buy it, right? Because we've decided this is the person that can buy it.
Mhm.
They don't want my Beanie Babies and they don't want my shelves.
But you
And
have
they
to sell it to them.
Well, what am I gonna do with my Beanie Babies? I don't have another shop.
You're gonna wait for the next buyer who has the vision the same as yours.
But OLCC, okay, but OLCC has already chosen, I mean, they have to go through this process. So I guess that's the question, because I don't know what happens after I say, sell to this person. So if I'm the store owner, can I say, I don't care who you chose, I'm not selling to them because they won't buy my Beanie Babies. I know.
Right, so the answer today is no, right? If the commission appoints an agent to take over that store, then that's the commission's role, right? Like that's the point of control, is we do have control over that. It kind of goes the opposite way. It's like, we can't compel that incoming agent to buy those Beanie Babies. So you're gonna have to get on eBay or something, take care of those, Leisha. I don't know how you're gonna get, I don't know how you're offloading them, but
But so, to
that's the
me,
kicker, right? Is that like,
that's why it's not as easy as the open market.
right,
And that's why we're having this discussion. I'd say.
yeah, and it's a different model, right? It's a control model, and the open free market doesn't exist with a control model as, you know, the overlord of our, like, it's our product, it's OLC's product. But I think that's where it's important for the commission, because you all really hold the keys to this. Like, you know, when we choose an agent, or when you all choose an agent to come into that store, that other work, like if that agent does want to buy those Beanie Babies, they can do that on the side, right? But if they don't want those, we can't compel them to purchase those, right? But we're saying as a commission, yes, we want this agent to sell on behalf of our state.
Anyway, it's just, to me, it's just that that additional twist, if you will,
Mhm.
that causes us to be having this conversation. I guess if I buy a liquor store, I'm not putting Beanie Babies in.
And that's your choice.
No, because they're still gonna have good resale. We're gonna
Right.
put those new dolls in. What are those called?
Ooh, the Lulu doll.
I have no idea what they're called.
Yeah, I follow.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You're the first person I know.
Oh, yeah. My daughter, it's a requirement if you're a good parent these days. Otherwise, you're a bad parent. That's what I was told.
It's
If
clear.
you need Beanie Babies, I got a box of them in the attic from my kids, so.
But what latitude does, you know, like how granular is this definition of buyout calculation?
But you mean on like the,
In the
like,
statute?
right, I mean, it like it defines what it is. That's where it talks about the years of sales and the percentage, right? Like in the fixtures. That's where it's defined as how we're doing it today, as part of that authority.
But it seems like there's been flexibility, because now you're saying we're kind of, it's a 4% buyout while so there's latitude. Like it's not saying this is how it's done, period.
Right, so that's in rule, I believe, is what you're pointing at, right? And there is language also in rule about the commission and their ability to have some of that latitude, right? But it is, that's the control of the commission.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing that language.
Mhm.
Like, what is the commission, like, what do we have to say about this? Right? Because if the debt, if this 845015090 says this is how it's done, then we don't, well, we have latitude except for that. It'd be interesting to know exactly what we can decide.
Yeah.
I think we should come up with a new committee and let's that, no, I'm just kidding. This is where you guys stop me because.
Well, I think the other point here, right, is that like you as the commission, like this is your choice, whether you want to change this or not too, right? So we're working through this now because also came to the OLCC and said, we want to look at this, and that's what we're doing right now. Ultimately, you know, again, this rests in the commission's hands on any changes, which I think is interesting. So, yeah.
Well, I have an opinion. I think it was a huge mistake at some point to start valuing anything but liquor sales. Because it's a slippery slope. As soon as you start saying shelving, right, you've essentially kind of open the box. And right now right now everybody's trying to figure out how to close it again. That if all it is just as an agency, you have to pay this much to have the right to sell this stuff. And all the other stuff, figure it out on the free market. That is so easy, right? But now we're into all this other stuff, right? And it's like, and that's where this all comes through. And it's not, what I think is really interesting about Silo, is that their acronym? Also, sorry. Also is that now they're trying to make this logical leap of saying that you have to mandate the purchase of everything to the next agent, which is clearly not the intent of all this, right? I mean, if I put big screen TVs everywhere in my space and it's also my man cave, right? Why would that be a function of what the OLCC is saying you have to pay? Right? The only thing you have to pay for and have to get approved for is the right to be an agent.
Seller stuff.
That's it.
So, and they knew this going into this. This was certainly a request that we agreed to, that we allowed them to have this side business so that they could augment their income. We have no control over it. We gave them that permission to do so. And like we've said here several times, they have a choice to do that, not to. And I can't imagine they would keep doing this all along if it wasn't a benefit to them. So I think it was a good idea, but it's not under our purview. We don't have the authority over that.
So are you saying the formula is in rule or statute?
The way about it, it's in rule there. I think statute talks about that there is a buyout, but then the rule is actually talking about how it's done. And that's
So it wouldn't
applied.
require legislative action if we wanted to like go in the direction that Kurt suggests, just for example.
Right. This is where like, yeah, I'll send this rule to all y'all so that you have it and can see that language. But yeah, depending on where some of this stuff fits, yeah, we could, as a commission, if you chose to do something different, there is some authority you have to do that.
Great, thank you.
That's a strong position to take, right? Say your business may be worth 1.4 million. Just find a buyer.
That is also improved by law.
Well, we're going to approve the agency part, right? But where it becomes difficult is when the buyer says, I want to just buy the right, but go next door.
Buying a farm without the farm implementation, it's personal property.
Right.
It's not like a convenience store, basically, or whatever they have aside from this.
Mhm.
So it would be in competition with other convenience stores, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you all want a quick stretch break before we move into Rich's presentation? So we'll come back at 11:40.
Just the agenda, because Rich was going to start, but Rich has to, we're going to have lunch coming up and Rich has a meeting between 1 and 3. So he doesn't want to like start and stop and start back up. And so lunch is coming up in 15, 20 minutes. So what we thought we'd do is one of the topics we wanted to have, and this is really for you individually and to talk around yourselves, is specific areas, topics of interest that you have that you might look to be part of study group on, or sort of take on as part of your role as a commissioner. So I don't know if you have any examples, Dennis, of the kind of things that you've been involved in that might help the new folks.
So part of what I love about this commission is people are fully engaged, and I've been on boards where people are they're just checking a box. I'm on a board or I'm on a commission. It doesn't So, what I want to know is, or what we want to discuss as a group is what lights you up about what's going on here. And I remember we have a tribal council, we have relations with the Oregon tribes. And so I was curious if anybody on the commission wanted to be engaged in that, and Jennifer Curran just said, yes, absolutely. I'd love to be doing that. So what we're asking is, what are the things you're interested in if you want to get deeper into, Alicia, you got public health, you like that. So I think we want people that are fully engaged and to be fulfilled by what you're doing and I don't think anybody's here in that position, being obligated to do something. And everybody have asked, I asked you to get on the audit committee, and I don't know whether you're going to shoot me or what, but now you're kind of engaged in it. And anyway, that's what we're looking for, is if you have interests that you want to engage further in, and then it's helpful to the commission, so that if somebody's involved in tribal relations, when we're talking about it, somebody at the table has been engaged with that and kind of inform us. It's not for us to provide direction in that, whatever field that is, but it's to keep us informed about what's going on in that area, because we are a complex agency and there's a lot of different phases to this thing. So anyway, that's the question I got. Did I describe that?
Very well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I got a star for that one. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete. I just have three personal interests. The first one is, it seems like the whole cannabis business is in trouble. And so how can the OLCC help us with that issue? It's such an important issue. And then education, that's huge. What do we do? How do we let the public know? And then lastly, public health. That's it.
What was the last one? I'm sorry.
Public health.
I'll piggyback on. Thank you. On Commissioner Chowry. For me, it all comes and stems from public education. How do we get the public to back an agency, a government agency? And to me, that's through education. I look at this one slide that Lisa presented, and I think that needs to be a social media presentation. That needs to be a video. What's an agent? I think about secret agent. Well, that's not what this is. So for me, it's public education. How do we get the public to back a government agency and understand the work that it does? And then yes, health. And then why isn't cannabis on the three-tier system?
That was my question too, coming in, but it's difficult. Very difficult. I've been pushing for that, and we'd have to upset the system. The only people that are successful in the cannabis business are vertically integrated. So we'd be pulling that back. But I agree. I've had other people come out saying, why didn't you do this? And I think there's
Sometimes you have to upset the apple cart. Prohibition upset the apple cart.
A little bit.
a tough pullback.
So, Commissioner Hayes,
Go ahead.
I see you've written health. And I know we talked about public health, which I think health is a little broader. And I would even go deeper into public health and say, I'm curious about prevention. When we look at funding, we've seen a decrease in prevention dollars. We've seen more, some of those taken and put into treatment. That's not our place, but I think to talk about prevention is also that public education piece. So it's a continuum. I'm very interested on that beginning end of that continuum around that prevention piece.
PSAs, we need to get back to the days of PSAs. It's kind of fun. Where the hell are your kids?
Okay. Did I capture that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Others?
I think you're gonna, Commissioner Batchby, ditto. Those are,
Can you get that mic a little bit closer?
Yeah, Commissioner Batch, these things are heavy.
Workout.
Curl that.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say ditto again. I mean, I think, the cannabis business and how it's regulated, I think is important. I mean, I understand we have kind of statutory limitations on how we can, what we can do there, but, and then public education, just having people understand what the OLCC does, and the value that it brings to the state. I think third largest source of state general fund is pretty important. And then the public health side and prevention, I think, is really important. You know, all the research that's coming out right now about how alcohol in relation to cancers and all that. I mean, most of the public doesn't know that at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my goal would just be to, there's just a lot of this stuff that has been tried or we've worked on or and just kind of, you know, my goal would just be or whatever, you know, would be to just continue and kind of help provide some historical knowledge guidance, because there's been so much of this stuff that we've attempted, like, you know, even going to the cannabis stuff, that there is, and I think Rich's presentation will be interesting in association with Lisa's, because there's aspects of alcohol regulation that would benefit cannabis. It's maybe not an apples to apples comparison, but stuff like in alcohol where you have cash on delivery, that is an aspect that I think would benefit people. Now, what I will also say is no good deed goes unpunished. When you start making changes, you know, there is a lot of frustration that can come out because people have, you know, been, they look to the agency as if it's, you know, that it can either solve the problems or has created it. So it's a challenge. So I will just say, like, my goal would just be to help provide some historical context to try to get things, because there's a lot of momentum too of stuff that's been done over the years that I think could continue. And I think there's also some directions maybe we haven't completely tried or redoubled efforts to try to make happen. So yeah, just looking at you know, what could really take place that within this state, within the realities of what we're having to deal with, and within you know, just, yeah, looking at it and on both sides. I think with alcohol, you have a historical precedent. Cannabis is still new and it is struggling, but some of that is some of it is OLCC. And I shouldn't. There's just a lot of complexity to the reasons why cannabis is struggling, and there is improvements to be made. It's not apples to apples with alcohol. And then the last other thing I'd say is, yeah, just trying to, like with the public education stuff, I'm all for that. We've done a few things. I think some of the challenge too is just realizing like what OLCC is and what OLCC isn't. Like, I think, you know, people, the revenue it creates, the some of the aspects of it are great, but I think there's always going to be an aspect with people just won't like. So I think, you know, yeah, you know, promoting it is good, but yeah, promoting the good parts of it, because there is a lot of great stuff. So I agree with you on that, but I think there's some things that can be pitfalls if it's promoted. So I don't know, just thoughts there. I guess just providing historical context would be my goal.
So question, if you talk about all this and this sharing, what other opportunities are you all going to have to do that kind of sort of your veterans educating the others than like this afternoon? Because this is, if we don't take advantage of having some of those conversations today, when else is it going to happen? Because we do have time after lunch, a couple hours with discussion topics. Sherilyn and I were thinking earlier about, you know, there was a question earlier, well, what really is our job as commissioners? So we thought there's something we do called a in scope, out of scope. So, you know, what's part of the commissioner's role? What's not part of the commissioner's role? So those are a couple kind of things we thought we could do in the afternoon, and maybe in some of these things, you know, I don't want you to be the sole source, Matt, but, you know, talking about this is stuff we've tried, this is stuff that hasn't worked, because, you know, we've all been there with someone come up with a brilliant idea and you'll go, oh, not again, right? Because we've tried this before and it hasn't worked. So I think, you know, I don't want to miss the opportunity to just dive into some of this stuff today, if this is really the opportunity we have in the retreat.
All right.
Right, right, right. So I know, that's why I know that it'd be Matt and
I
Dennis.
don't know
who
you
have
can
that.
get
And-
everything done today, but.
Well, no, but pick a couple of key things that are most important
Whatever the group.
and really focus on those. And that's really the discussion topics that we were looking for in the back. Now, if we talk about cannabis before Rich makes his presentation, is that going to be out of scope? Well, we could have, he's going to talk for an hour, so we can talk more about cannabis after, and maybe focus on the alcohol elements, you know, after lunch, so we don't miss the opportunity and the education we have from Rich.
Well, and we also, if there's areas we want to dive deeper into, we've got an incredible staff that can bring us more clarity and,
Yep.
and more information on what's going on that they can present to us, and then we can move from there to see
Right,
where we want to go, if we want to
right.
make some changes. And part of it is educating ourselves on this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have also elevated our comms department as well. We brought John Brady on after Pappygate, and I think he's doing a good job. But it is part of his mission is educating the public as well as others. So
Okay, so I guess, you know, as you're talking about, you're mentioning this, you know, our business is about helping organizations change, hopefully positively. Sometimes I say we're in the improvement business. And one of my favorite expressions that I'm quoting myself, every solution is a hypothesis. So, you know, you try something and you find out, well, you know, we were only half right, and now here are these other unintended consequences. So understanding sort of the potential implications of changes, I think, would be important. So if we kind of look across these, is there one that really stands out that, you know, do you want to just talk about sort of what it is and what it isn't, or what your role and what it isn't, or do we just want to talk about things that have been tried in the past? Any general sense of, you know, what you'd like to kind of start with when we come back after lunch? I think it was partly it was partly what, well, it was
That was more
comment.
from the public promotion perspective. I think maybe for I think everybody here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there was also a question, I think it was yours, Kurt, about, you know, what is okay for a commissioner to do, what is not okay? Or, you know, kind of what are the boundaries of the role of a commissioner, and how do we make sure we stick within those and don't, you know, tread into that out of it? Is that a fair reflection of what you were saying?
Rule change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And various lawyers were calling me.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one lawyer who was a neighbor called me and, for example, said, "Hey, what's your position on this?" And I said, "I think it's a terrible idea. It's going to bring crime."
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, "But, you know, I'm not talking in my capacity as a commissioner. I'm a neighbor of this proposal."
Mm-hmm.
And then he went and told some rep that Chowry's against it. And, you know, it's important for us to know that we cannot talk on behalf of the commission. And in fact, we're not going to make a decision about where the St. John's bottle place could be. So this is really important. I think that threshold question of our scope, what we can say, you know, people are going to want to come to you and ask you questions. And so threshold, scope stuff, that's really helpful.
I think you can.
I mean, is it John is like our PIO, right?
yes, yeah. So
So
everything
everything
goes through
goes through
John.
John.
What during the troubles, as we'll call it, we were bombarded. Matt and I, most of the commissioners were bombarded with phone calls, with reporters wanting answered questions, emails to answer the questions. We do not answer any questions. You talk to John Brady.
Yeah.
filter everything through him. And you brought up a great point. We don't have any opinion on anything that's going on. We do not. As a private citizen, we can vote and make it clear that this is, I'm not speaking for the commission, but my best advice is to not say anything at all and
Yeah, we're,
stay out of
If
it.
you say anything though, just make sure you say is my opinion, but it's, yeah, it gets
or
stickier
better
than that.
just say, run it through John. I
Well,
am
well, oh,
part
yeah,
of, I am
speaking-
part of a board
Mhm.
and I have no personal opinion outside of the board and you're not asking me outside of the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to get you into something and want you to respond and they'll take that and
And run with it.
yeah.
So, kind of a nuance on that subject. I just really appreciate staff when they're clear, and you made that clear, like, here's some information, but you will not be voting on it and you have no, you have really no say, but here's some information that you need. I think that's really helpful because there's information that we need so we can do our jobs and we can have a well-rounded perspective. But, my first question is always, is this my decision? When on boards or in positions, to be really clear where the authority for that decision is. So how we spend money that the OLCC and liquor sales makes, not our choice. The new committee that's looking at the additional fee, where and how that goes, not our choice. So really being clear, and I think staff has been very helpful in doing that.
Yeah. And if any of you need more information in certain areas, be sure and let staff know, and then we can make that part of make it happen.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? We ready for lunch?
Let's do lunch.
Okay.
Pete, I just wanted to say I've been ordered to appear in court at 1 o'clock, so between 1 and 3, I'll be out for discussion, sadly.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know. Great.
We will miss you
I will miss you.
and your inquisitive face.
Do you have to drive to get to it?
No, I moved to appear remotely, so I'll be in my room in my half suit. Your Honor.
Business up top, pretty on the bottom.
All right, so we're now entering into our discussion period, and actually it was nice because right after we were breaking for lunch, you were all standing around talking, which is kind of the idea of what we're going to do now. Oh, yes, thank you.
Excuse me.
Bless you. So based on the conversations we've had, what went back there, we want to sort of divide the discussion time into these topics with roughly 45 minutes and a break. So start with public education, which we've sort of interpreted as help the public understand the OLCC role. And then role of commissioners, what's in scope, out of scope, keys to success. And maybe so we can hear some history about what works, what hasn't. Then we have Rich, should be back at 3 from their meeting. So we'll hear Rich's presentation. And then we thought it would be smart to hear from Rich before we went on to this other topic of how to support the cannabis industry, or, other topics related to cannabis that I think he'll be covering that. So we didn't want to get that out of order. And then, so we'll take probably a quick break between his piece and this. We'll take a little bit longer breaks here, and then we'll move into final comments and adjournment around 5 or before, if this stuff all goes faster than that. So that's our afternoon plan. Sound okay? Alternative ideas, questions, concerns? Rope course? Yeah, that would be good.
She's not even.
The one thing I remember is my arms are really sore the next day because, you know, you're freaking out and you think you're going to fall. Okay. So in these discussions, we're going to look to you to talk amongst yourselves. Either Sherilyn or I will try to sort of capture ideas that come out as you're talking, but we're not going to necessarily like call on you. We're looking for you to, you know, talk about your thoughts about what we're trying to accomplish. And that's kind of, I would always sort of start there, and then talk about what ideas you have, what you see as missing. We understand, by the way, that the staff has a responsibility to do that. And there are people who work on that. So part of this would be what can you do to help them and what can you do to help the agency as well. So I think when we talk about this one. Sound okay?
Mhm.
All right. So there have been a number of questions, concerns raised about this. So like I say, I'm just going to take notes and you guys talk.
Question, I'm going to assume the answer is no. If I, as a commissioner, wanted to create an OLCC page of social media to do PSA posts that were sanctioned by OLCC, is that something I could do, or would that be directed to John?
In my opinion, it should be directed to John. It's not something we would do independently, but a good idea. And I think he may already be working on that now. So
I know I cornered him.
pardon?
I cornered him.
Okay.
Let me just follow up, just because I was thinking about what you asked. But if there is an OLCC page that you like, you can like it or put it on your post.
Yeah.
But we don't have a social media page.
You know, but let's say they get one.
Yeah,
We do?
we have several, yeah. Yeah. Social media on all
I don't
forms.
believe in social.
Yeah, you're asking wrong. I'm a Luddite. I know nothing about social media and I'd like to know less.
You can
So
share
once
it.
it's there, my point is, it's not political to like it or to share it with friends. Should be fine.
I am now following. It's OLCC_liquor.
Yeah, Facebook, there's even TikTok and
Instagram.
Instagram. Did you find it?
I found the Instagram. More needs to be done.
Okay, I just, I will not argue with you.
Stay close to your mics.
Yeah. Repeat your comment too.
My comment?
Oh, I just asked if we
Oh.
needed to have a microphone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Excuse me. Sorry, that was like right.
I mean, so I'm thinking relative to public education, my thinking has to do with this, with a project that's going on that I'm also involved with Travel Oregon, Travel Portland, Oregon Business Council, where they're talking a lot about Oregon, right, as kind of a rich food and beverage place. But one thing, we've had liquor licenses in Washington and California, and I guess almost like a tertiary benefit that I don't think people understand. But you see it in any industries where, you know, like the regulatory framework surrounding any industry ends up kind of promoting or suppressing that industry, right? Like, why is Oregon the capital of knife making in the United States? Well, Oregon, I think, is the only state in the union where a knife is not considered a weapon. And so for whatever reason, they started making knives here. So we're the knife making capital of the country. Nobody knows that, but you just think of Benchmade and Leatherman's and all these different things. And so, but for restaurants, you know, a huge support of the industry has been the relative ease and lack of expense related to liquor licenses because anybody that's been in the business knows that alcohol sales are kind of the lifeblood of our industry. And so, I mean, I think that there's some areas that'd be interesting, but this is almost like research or things we'd have to look into. But I think there's a lot of stuff that Oregonians value, right? Like the support of local industry, and certainly the number of SKUs that OLCC carries of local product, right? I think is an important part of the story. I think an important part of the story is how the regulatory environment managed by the OLCC really fosters the hospitality industry in a way that I don't think very many people understand, even within the industry, but is real, right? And how specifically it's critical for a dying breed of restaurant, which are full service restaurants, which depend disproportionately on wine and beer sales, right? Because they're bigger ticket numbers and it helps. I think there's something interesting there, just kind of in the ecosystem of, you know, food in Oregon, whether it's restaurants or the support of kind of smaller producers. You know, you think about even craft beer, right? Why was Oregon the craft beer capital of the United States? And it was really about regulatory changes that were made here relative to microbreweries and tight house laws. And the McMiniman brothers, and I think was it Ron Wyden? Anyways, you look back to '84 and Oregon completely changed what the rules were, which is why you had an explosion here, you know, almost a decade earlier than any other state. So I think there's a history there would be interesting to talk through, because I don't think people understand that, but people love the food and love the beverage of Oregon, but maybe don't understand how, rather than, I think the reputation would be that the permitting process is something that inhibits things, as opposed to understanding that the ease of the permitting process and the cost of it, right? We paid $235,000 for our liquor license in San Francisco, as opposed to what's the current fee? $1,100. I think it's $1,100 now, but forever it was $454 until fees went up. But I mean, it's just a drop in the bucket. And the process is camps getting there. It used to be a solid 45 days in Portland, and I think we're probably at 60 now. But I mean, it's fast, right? It's fast and expensive, and it's the lifeblood of, you know, of Oregon hospitality. So I think there's something there that would be, you know, interesting for people to know more about, as long as we're talking about public education. So
I think that would be
The license.
400.
oh, it's more so
Seven.
1,100 a year, I think. Have to ask.
Mine was super cheap.
Good question to ask, but it's not a barrier to, yeah, getting in.
And it would be great to have OLCC public face of the social media, a PSA. Did you know? Remember we grew, maybe not you, but growing up, we had, did you know? Did you know? Or the PSAs from OPB, public service announcements.
Yeah.
Like that could be, that we could have 100 different items that John's team could pop out 3 times a week. Did you know? Because what Kurt said is super important. And especially as it relates to dollars that come into our state through consumers.
Well, and especially the pro-business aspect of that. I think many don't see OLCC as necessarily pro-business, like you said, that the license is a low barrier, but they want to view it as a barrier of some sort.
I mean, if everybody's seen the Oregon Lottery promos that they do, talking about how much the Oregon Lottery is generating for parks and roads and schools. So having something like, I mean, I think working with a branding expert or advertising agency that could help us kind of figure out the right way to brand it, right way to communicate it would be really helpful. We can kind of guess at what the important messages are ourselves, but I think we need to work with people that know how to do this.
You
kind of
literally could work with any Gen Z right now.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think along with that, we need to clearly understand, although John did just make a presentation, but I think we need to clearly understand what he's doing already and what his map forward is. And then once we understand that, we can contribute probably.
A lot of it doesn't, it's not circled around social media, which I think is a really huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
And most of what I hear is about reinvestment in Oregon, right? But I feel like there's an opportunity to talk about the other stuff. Like, how many different things can you buy in Oregon that you
Versus-
can't buy
yeah.
somewhere else, right? That's a value, I think that's of value. I know it's a big value in my industry, right? If you wanted to open a whiskey bar, if you go to Washington, they have to bring in, they basically import it all through eBay, their specialty stuff. So they have to bring it in kind of, I mean, there's a whole onerous process of doing that. And here you don't have to, right? And so I just think there's things like that that I think Oregonians value. Especially the local stuff. I feel like thinking about how many distilleries we have in this state,
Mhm.
and I mean, distilleries are a booming part of Oregon. I feel like I travel elsewhere and see them starting up, but I feel like that's been going on for a long time here. And it's
My friend up in Washington just celebrated 25 years of his distillery.
oh really?
Which was hard. It was like a
And it's important, I think, having that voice come from somebody in the industry like yourself that as an owner or operators, that they chime in with their signature on it and say, this is a great benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I just imagine like TikTok videos or Instagram videos that are just like 30 seconds of a distillery talking about how OLCC has helped them in terms of, SKUs that are available and all that, or a restaurant owner talking about how,
testimonials.
yeah, just those short testimonials that people might watch that are more organic, not
Mhm.
like professionally produced and all that kind of stuff that people actually pay attention to.
Maybe those are effective. LCC can't talk about themselves because of some mission thing. I mean, I feel like partnerships with Orla. I mean, I bet you Orla it'd be easy for them to have content talking about, as they talk about the challenges and the opportunities of opening a restaurant, to have OLCC featured somehow in that, or it's kind of somebody else doing the talking, but it's because I know, Jason agrees with Jason Brandt, the head of Orla. He agrees 100% with this. So
Tell
maybe
the
that's,
public who Orla is.
huh?
Tell the public who.
Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, and Jason Brandt's their CEO. And he understands how fortunate we are to have the regulatory environment we have here versus California or, other states where it's very, very expensive or a very long process.
Did you know?
Yeah, good point. It is a friendly environment. And I think those that are sometimes in the environment that don't realize how great they have it here as opposed to trying to do it someplace else, be an important message.
I think it's good to get everybody else's sentiments on it.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, it's good to have everyone else's sentiments on it. I agree with everything. I think that we've gotten the message out pretty effectively. It's just a matter of, I think the people that are going to utilize the services of the agency are the ones that are most important to get it out to. So, yeah, I think, and Orla does a great job at that.
Anything else? I think it'd be great if you met with John too.
Yeah.
It would be, your
I-
perspective is unique. Both of you guys, yeah, those that have been in the business or in the business.
I think maybe we set aside some time during one of our monthly meetings where we have John come in and we just literally spitball all the
Yeah.
opportunities that he has in front of him that he
Yeah.
can task his people to do.
Yeah, I don't want to assume that he's not doing this stuff because I haven't been close to it, but hear from him exactly what his plan is. And then again, we don't want to give staff more work, but I want us to have more understanding. So when we can contribute, we can effectively.
I think that's a fine line, tough question, creative idea on how do you get the people that have knowledge and skill to support what he's doing, opportunity to share. And then those of us that have no knowledge support or, I'm not gonna be able to support staff in that if it's not my skill set or my profession.
Right.
So it's kind of back to that list of what are you interested in? So do we have a way within our system that is appropriate, and appropriate meaning I am not staff, so I'm not gonna do staff work. But if I've got a particular interest, I have an interest in public health and prevention. I've had opportunities to share what is important to me. How do we set that up so that if there are people that have particular interest in this subject, they aren't staff, they aren't going to direct staff. That's not what I'm hearing, but we want to be able to glean their knowledge. How do we do that in the most appropriate way that makes sure everybody maintains their roles? And I think that's a tough question for an organization like ours.
It's a great question. I think our daughter Maura is in Amsterdam. She was senior director for Adidas, and I talked to her about, and she said they have, I forget what they call it, the knowledge library or somebody, but on any particular topic, there was a director that the employees could call, say, I need some help on this topic. So the skill sets that you have and the experience that you have would lend to public health and certainly things like that. I had asked, just as an example, when we started wanting to upgrade our comms department and looking for somebody, I asked Mary Ellen Glenn, who's head of communications and has lots of White House background, that would she help? She had jumped in right away and said, yeah, I'll help that team. So it's a good discussion to how do we make ourselves available for whatever the staff needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate that I had to serve on when they were writing the mission statement. It was great to get my input into that area. So how do we do this? And I think that's the question that's still out there. Not just that staff calls if they need particular help, which I think is great, but that if commissioners have thoughts, how do they get that to staff in the most appropriate way? So I think that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Not that I'm giving anybody work. I'm just saying it's a challenge. It's not easy.
How can
There's
we
no
do it
way.
without adding
Yeah.
on to their burden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I think
But you need a mic.
have way in the corner there.
For consideration, what's worked in my short time here is when those staff requests sort of came through me, so I could sort of help manage the priority load for the staff. In the past, I don't think it happens much now, but in the past, when commissioners would reach out to staff, even if it was just a question, it would be received as a directive, just due to the hierarchy of your position and theirs relative to yours. Commissioner Warren, you had a question recently about the bottle bill, and so we prepared just a brief state memo to you. So just to give you a little background and understanding about that issue, Not at all, but that's fine. I mean, that's the current program that we run, and one of our jobs is to educate you on the work of the agency. So that felt very appropriate. And the fact that it went through me and I could sort of help the staffer stay within the scope and not go away, give you
Another
20
week.
pages on it to help him, but also to help you, so I can play that role. And if there are issues that you want to weigh in on, and they are hopefully within the confines of what I presented about all the work that we're doing, if you want to help us in those specific areas, certainly I can help engage the specific staff and maybe before or after a commission meeting, if you wanted to do it in person or something like that, we could just schedule that, so that I could be there with the right staff and we could make sure that your input and expertise helps inform the work that we do. That would feel comfortable to me, but it's just for your consideration.
I didn't mean for my question to generate all of that work for you either. I was just very
Yeah.
curious as to why that was not a policy.
No, not at all. I think that's a good question. I mean, it's a nuanced issue and it also changed July 1. So it's an area where I think it helped me realize we really need to educate. I need to get educated and we need to educate the public about how people can recycle RTDs because there's an opportunity to do that. So I think it was a good question and we do have expertise. It was not much of a lift for Jim because he's so in the weeds on this. So it was totally appropriate. So no apology necessary.
And usually when one commissioner has a question, the rest of us want to know it. We're just too
Mhm.
afraid to ask you. So I think
Good,
if you
then I-
answer one
Send a
commissioner,
new girl.
yeah, we send her. Exactly. But I do appreciate that. If we might take this, Commissioner Warren has some thoughts on the PR work, on our
Mhm.
education campaign. How would you do that? I mean, this is how I would do it. I
Mhm.
would ask the chair to do could we have an update on the campaign? We had one, but are there new changes? And then when we're in public on the dais, that would give us an opportunity to share our thoughts.
Mhm.
Would be one way of doing that, because we do our business in public.
Mhm.
And I think this is a big thing for us. Obviously, it rose to spending time here, that we might get more than one presentation, we might get ongoing.
Mhm.
And then you have to put up with some of our crazy ideas about how we
Right.
should do Burma shave signs, or you guys don't even know what those are. No, you do. Um, but would give us a chance in public to give our opinion, which I think is what's appropriate. I don't want to be on a staff committee. It's not appropriate for me to be on a staff committee. But
Mhm.
does that make sense what I'm saying, or am I just rambling?
Yeah, as opposed to a little bit different than what I said, would be to have sort of like a side meeting to,
I would say either one is
oh,
fine.
either one, okay.
I don't think there's one way. I said that's
Mhm.
how I would
Yeah.
do it. If there was, it really just depends for me on what the subject is. Is it like, I just want to give you some ideas, then I
Mhm.
probably would do a side meeting. I want this out in public, then I would ask the chair. So as a
Yeah.
commissioner, I would do, because either one is appropriate and ethically and legal. It's just
Mhm.
ethical and legal. It's just the subject would,
Mhm.
be the difference. But what I wouldn't do is ask to be on a staff committee. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot
you-
of sense. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I think both are interesting. I mean, John and I are working on sort of like generally what topic areas of interest are going to come before you. We're going to have like a whole year's plan out, so you know what's coming. The first up was Oregon's Way, because that work is new for the agency, and John's relatively new, and so that sparked a lot of interest. So I think, yeah, following on from that would be good, both at the commission and then maybe a side group, because we do have Mary Ellen, who is, a communications professional. Commissioner Warren, you have a lot of interest in this, it seems like. So my hope out of today was to find out like what were your interest areas and what were your expertise that you could bring to bear, because, more the merrier for the work we have to do together. So I think both could work depending on the topic. I agree.
I think as an agency, we can say, these are the things that we need to work on. And I always look at it from a public view perspective. In my job, the public doesn't necessarily understand terminology that I use,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so my job is to educate the consumer before they enter into a process, or they become part of a process. So I just think it's really important for OLCC in the lingo that the agency uses, that on the public facing side, the public understands what that lingo means and what it means to them, right? And the benefit that the agency has to them in their everyday lives that they may not understand
Mm-hmm.
because no one has told them.
Yeah.
So I just think it's, yes, I do have an interest, as you can see,
Mm-hmm.
in this. Because I think it's really important. I think what the agency provides, what this provides for the state of Oregon and to the Oregonians who live in the state, that cannot be, that's got to be a story that has to be shouted from the rooftops.
Mhm.
And I believe that when public understands what's in it for them, they then can get behind the train, right?
Mhm.
And so things that are important to the agency that are also important to the public can move along in a flow that makes sense versus being a government agency, being Sisyphus trying to push a boulder up a hill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't have to be on the committee. Yes, you are.
We're having sidebar over there.
I said I don't want to be on that committee because I'm not creative.
All right,
Oregon Way was a religion.
Yeah.
That-
yeah. Yeah.
Oregon Way or Oregon's Way? I wrote it up here.
Yeah. Anything else on public education? Okay.
Well, I mean, you talked about engaging the commissioners, brought up where you were involved in the strategic plan, and you mentioned being part of the committee that worked on the mission statement. And earlier, when Lisa was sharing the mission statement, I was looking at, oh, sorry. I'll say the beginning quickly. The comment about being involved from Commissioner Hayes and the strategic planning work that we did, where we actually did have commissioners working with staff management. One item, big item, was the mission statement, the vision. And I was thinking earlier when Lisa put that on the screen, how much time we spent on every single word that
Yeah.
ended up in the mission statement. It was the committee that did it, and then the leadership team worked on it to finally get down to that one statement, which hope everybody, appreciates not just the work that went into it, but how it tried to say so much in a very short statement. But for the newer commissioners, that was something that commissioners got involved in. It was a strategic planning process. So it's not something you're going to do every week. But I think Tara and at the time, Craig felt it was important and Dennis to involve the commission in that work to set the direction that ended up being in the strategic plan. So that's another opportunity that may come up next time the strategic plan gets done or another time. So I don't know if you guys have any comments on how you mentioned it was useful, productive. Matt was involved as well.
It was good. I think, it's a challenge to incorporate an accurate statement for especially for this agency, just because there's so many perspectives. I think that we included a lot of folks
Mhm.
and it was good to get that down. I think after the fact, sometimes we heard so it's good. I think sometimes really tailoring on the upfront, just sometimes if we have a specific initiative, just really from the outset defining what clearly our objective is, because I think sometimes with an agency this broad, you risk you risk confusion if you don't have really clarity up front, exactly, and who your target audience is. And that's what's nice about, I don't know, where being able to just sort of target those messages versus having to go broad, because they're received differently from whatever.
When you look at that mission statement, you see certain words that jump out at you and go, oh, that was a 2-hour conversation,
I'd have
but
to-
it was really good.
Well, I remember there was a lot that we covered in that. I'm trying to even remember exactly what the ending mission statement was that we landed on, because we did the mission statement, we did sort of the vision and values, and after the fact, what I hear is what from stakeholders, well, what wasn't in it, or what was, so I think where the previous mission statement was shorter and succinct, and it had less for people to latch on to, or feel wasn't accounted for. Like, I think that when we did the longer process, I think, people, whether they felt left out or whether they felt like certain things didn't cover exactly, but yeah, we did spend a lot of time on it. But you can't please everybody is kind of what I got out of it. So it was like, but I do recall having a lot of discussion on it, and once it's done, you just sort of, it is what it is.
Well, the tricky part, I think it came up on a slide earlier, it's sort of, we do all this stuff and bottle bill. It's sort of like the bottle bill sort of ends up as this special, very important, valuable thing that is hard to get integrated into those all their sort of, more integratable role of the.
Right.
of the commission.
But
Anyway,
I just, back to the mission statement, which you guys didn't get a participate. I was a new commissioner, so I got to meet some staff, although it was virtual. There is a lot of passion and knowledge, and that was what was incredible for me, to watch these staff folks from all parts of the organization have a lot of passion and belief in how things should be and what was important. And so when I see it, I say we spent a lot of time on that word, but we were going deep in as to why you had it. And I don't know, it was very helpful to get a real sense of the organization, getting to hear from staffs.
Mhm. I would also say, having been an observer to it, it was really great to see how having commissioners participate didn't squelch the participation of the staff, because they were very active, no holds barred. I mean, we didn't get in knockdown, drag out fights over anything, although there were some different opinions, but to have the commissioners who were there participate was really good, because there was no like, don't want to say anything because there's a commissioner in the room. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, that's why just holding our comments, and I think to Tara's point, like making sure that, when we do make comments, it's succinct, it's specific, it's not to sway their efforts. And that's what, with that process, I tried to say as little as possible and just pick my words carefully, because we're not having to do the day-to-day work that those folks are. So, and when we have something to say, it's an important, I think it does get taken differently. So that's always been important to me, is to not add input until it's our appropriate time or whatever. And I thought that's kind of how that mission, vision, values thing worked well, just sort of, keeping our comments limited.
It's kind of like with my children, Dad, if I want your advice, I'll ask you for it. So I want us to be available to the staff, not and anything else we go through Tara for any of that. But it's a good point. We want to be available and a resource, and not adding to their burden. So.
Any other elements of the public education that come to mind? Any other topics? I think the ground rules of working through Tara, being aware that there's, you know, it's not a lost topic for them, for staff. Any other things? I mean, public health had come up earlier, so I'm going to just bring that up. You know, it would be a whole nother big thing, but we've talked about it in the context of the hospitality industry and distilleries and sort of that element of the organization. Then, but on the public health side, you mentioned that's an area of interest for you. And the public education component, are there things that you would want to just discuss about that? I think that was, going back to the strategic planning work, I think that was kind of a theme that we wanted to make sure that we made the public health role of the OLCC a bit more visible than it had been. That's my impression of kind of how we went through that process. Anyway, so when we're talking about public education, I was wondering if there are any thoughts on that you want to think about or discuss.
I'm not as much familiar with the public health stuff, so I'm
Mhm.
curious your thoughts on it. For in terms of our mission to try to promote that aspect of it, or
Just, we talked, like I said, we talked about sort of the industry, food and beverage, hospitality piece, and then there's which is the promotion in the industry and the economic benefit and just the, nice life of being in Oregon. But then there's this other sort of part of the mission, which is really the first one, is public health. So, if you're just talking about public education, are there any aspects of that come out and if not, then we can take a break.
So my questions earlier about the effect of control on consumption was kind of related to that. I mean, so when Washington privatized, people were coming across the border into Oregon to buy spirits here. And so I mean, there's the pricing issue there, but there's also, we have a goal of reducing consumption. If public health is our goal, then reducing consumption or having safe levels, according to CDC, there is no safe level of consumption. So, but, minimizing consumption, I think, is part of our goal. So, are we succeeding in that? And I don't know the answer to that.
Look at Oregon versus our neighbor, control versus privatization. Privatization increased abuse, increased public health issues, which is one of our core values, right? So I think as it pertains to, again, educating the public as to what the agency does, how it helps, that's certainly key. So there's, in my mind, if you're looking at public education, there are different segments, right? How it helps hospitality business, promotes business, that's an educational piece. How it creates opportunities to ensure public health and the agencies that we help, or that the programs, health programs that the agency helps benefit through the proceeds of sales of distilled spirits, right? So in my head, I see on a social media page of public education and how it helps businesses, promotes business, how it's very pro-business, how it promotes health and safety, even though we're a controlled state, right? Versus our neighbor who decided not to be a controlled state and has now, their citizens are, the consequences of that action is having an adverse effect on their citizens, right? So I think, to me, education has multiple opportunities to speak on, multiple opportunities that the agency, the things that the agency promotes as a benefit.
Good.
That was a very succinct, I apologize.
No, it was good. I think it's kind of rare that you have a real world experiment as your neighbor state that a lot of people think Oregon and Washington, right? It's kind of one big Pacific Northwest chunk of the country. And then, but you have this big contrast right there and can, learn from that, maybe pros and cons, but it's interesting to have that opportunity, if you want to call it that. Okay, that's kind of what I meant. Just, just some thoughts on that piece of it. All right, so we've used the 45 minutes that we had. If there's no other thoughts, or again, this is you guys sharing amongst yourselves. Anybody else want to add any of their comments on this? Thanks, Tara, for the, the alignment on where we're going. Okay, so let's come back at 2 and we'll start on the next topic, which is the role of commissioners, kind of in scope, out of scope, all that good stuff. What, did you have a comment? Okay. Oh, yes, cookies.
He's 40. Yeah. It's 30 years now. So you're stuck with nothing.
Yeah, who's talking about? Are we ready to start before I give permission to unmute all that good stuff? Okay. We are back in session and moving into our second topic for the afternoon, which is the role of commissioners in and out of scope, keys to being a successful commissioner member. I think this is where some of our commissioners that have been on for longer can help provide some guidance in that direction. But I think more importantly, maybe people that are newer to the commission can help identify where they think they have questions about the boundaries, the rules, the how we work. I think rules of the game came up yesterday in our earlier session. So maybe we should start there where some of the questions are from the people that have not been on the commission as long and see if we can't get some of them answered and or have discussions about them. So again, it's your conversation. So I'm going to look to some of our newer commissioners to get us going. Questions about commissioner role? Rules.
Know what you don't know. And so that's where I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in this conversation. I don't really know.
What our boundaries or what our limits are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might have a reputation of being a little anal about some things.
Might?
I might. But for me, I think having worked in government for many years, staffed a board of county commissioners, and then been an elected and been on a couple of different state commissions, I think I worry when people are close to the gray. And so you don't even get with me close to the line. I'll be like, whoa, this is scaring me. So I think there is the role of us as a body that does our business, our work in public. And so how do we ensure that happens? Because it's easy to not have it happen. I've really appreciated DOJ being at the meetings. I've really appreciated staff being particularly at our executive sessions where they're really clear and they stop conversations, because it's really easy to get into conversation about things that weren't noticed or things that really should be done on the dais. And so I just really want to continue to ask for that help, because again, I'll probably overcompensate in the area of being too close to the line. And so I tend to, look at staff or look at DOJ if I'm wondering, should we be having this conversation? Also, just being really clear as to how do we get a conversation we want to have on the agenda? And we've touched on that, but it would be really helpful, I think, particularly for new people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but how do I get this conversation that's really important that I can't have an executive session because we didn't notice it, it doesn't belong there, on the agenda? I think you're very willing to put things
Yeah.
on the agenda. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying having the conversation about the process that we all agree to. Now,
Yeah,
is
I would,
it-
yeah, on that note, I would just ask me and we'll talk to Tara and we try to get it on the agenda. We meet, we have a pre-meeting, Matt and I and Tara meet every Monday. And then we have a pre-commission meeting that goes over the agenda. But I could introduce it at that time, and we're not in a dialed in process. If you bring the topic up, we'll talk about it. If you put it on the agenda or get a staff member to come address whatever the issue is and do it in public. Is that,
I think that's great and very easy. I challenge us to say, what if we get a commissioner that has a particular agenda and consistently puts things on the agenda? I'm not saying I want you to come up with some strict way that things get on the agenda. I would just say that to my fellow commissioners, if it's important to you, what I would ask is that during a meeting, when we're on the dais, that's when I ask you, can we get blah, blah, blah I would love to hear from,
you want to do it in public? I see.
yeah,
Okay.
which you can do it either way.
Yeah.
It's just, it gives my fellow commissioners a heads up that I want to do that. And that way, you could say, Alicia, Commissioner Hayes, you've asked for that and we have covered it. And I'm wondering if that's the best use of our time. I don't suspect that's where we'll end up, but it does allow the other commissioners to say, what's more important to me is this or that. I doubt that's going to happen for years, but you never know.
Well,
You never know.
you're closer to the line that you're talking to an Irishman you got here as the chair. That's, I discover the boundaries when I cross them. So that's I know where they are. So I appreciate having you here because I have not served in government as you have. So I like the balance there, but I'm sure we can work something out that would get everybody's interest. And if we need to have a presentation, we have a presentation. And then certainly, and I know you like to have it on the dais, but sometimes just a pre-meeting, we're sitting in there chatting. What about this thing? And then we can say, is that worthy?
Absolutely not a problem. If, somebody gives you a call and says, did you know this was happening? I think it'd be good. And you all decide to put it. I don't want you to think that is a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's one way. The other way is to ask for it on the dais. So
Yeah.
Either way is fine. I just hope everybody understands that they have a voice and they can ask for that. We can ask to hear
Okay.
more from communications. We can ask to hear more from, our public health folks.
Well, and
That's
that's
the
up.
way I believe. If you're going to tell me that's wrong, now's the time.
I'm not telling you. Either way is good. I like the idea though that everybody feels empowered to go for there. Say, this is what I want to hear about. And that's something we create as a group of building trust and getting to know each other like we are here. We can have more discussion about that. That's just my thoughts on it. So it's up to the commission to decide how to do that. But
What's the best existing resource that kind of tells us where our scope begins and ends as commissioners?
Well, I just pulled this up just kind of as a broad view that, the only things that we're involved in are licensing and regulation, public safety, education, administration, and the bottle bill oversight. So if it falls into those, that we have some authority, as some say in there. But if you want something tighter than that or more specific,
Let's just choose one and kind of,
Talk it through.
talk through it.
So pick,
Bottle bill.
All right.
That bottle bill oversight.
what does that mean?
what does that mean? Yeah.
Maybe bottle bill's a bad one.
Yeah,
Like public health. I don't know,
yeah.
is there one that anybody's more interested in?
Just go
Okay.
down in order.
So, well, licensing and regulation, the OLCC licenses and oversees everyone involved in the manufacture, sale, service of alcohol and recreational marijuana, from producers all the way through to wholesalers and retailers and bars and restaurants and dispensaries. So that's kind of the broad deal now. Do we want to,
That have to do with like, I don't know, you have to be 21,
right?
just trying to pick a silly one.
So we have a team that goes out and,
But I mean, we don't have, no, I'm saying to hold a license,
yeah,
you have to be 20.
oh, yeah.
We don't have the right to say, we want to change it to 20.
That'd be a law change, or it'd be federal. I think federal, I don't know if the law changed federally where you have to be 20, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing is there's a significant difference between law and rule. And OLCC deals with rule, but the bright lines are in law. And I mean, so it's like with 21, I don't know if that's a state law or or
Federal.
In proximity to a school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that, again, that's, I don't know if that was set in at just at OLCC, but I do know that, like, for instance, there was just the rule where like new cannabis stores couldn't be within 1,000 feet of kindergarten, whatever it was. And so they had to just determine where like that was passed into law, and then the rule had to change at OLCC. So initially the law kind of gave the broader bright lines, and then the rule kind of refined it at OLCC, how it was implemented. But yeah, so I mean, most of the stuff that's mandated of OLCC is legislative. The nitty gritty of it is kind of the regulatory stuff. I mean, obviously, but I think that, I don't know if that answers it. That's been my experience. I don't know, would you have other stuff?
Yeah, I just wanted to just like for newer folks. This is a nice resource here in terms of like where are we now? It lists sort of the revised statute and the current administrative rules that govern what we do. So Laura, if you hit on the plus near the Oregon revised statute, you'll see the statutes as related to each of the bottle bill, the alcohol, wine, malt beverages, cannabis regulation. So if you want to know what does the statute say? And then scroll down to the administrative rules. These are what we've implemented these rules to interpret how we govern those statutes, how we regulate. And again, if you click into those chapters, you'll see the specific as to what are the rules now. You as a commission, and forgive me, I don't mean to be condescending at all, but this is what you have the authority to change. And so when we come to you and we say we would like to open a rule, we would like to do rulemaking on, let's say, Division 9 service permits, and you say yes, then the staff engages in the Rules Advisory Committee and the public comment, and we develop a rules package that will come back to you that you will then vote on to adopt or not. And then we would update these rules accordingly. Yep. Or if the legislature takes an action, like that's what happened last time, the legislature, after the long session, they passed some new laws. And so now we needed to go into rulemaking to update the rules in accordance with those laws. Yep. Yep. That was one of them. We also did the emergency rulemaking around the bottle bill because we have the Alternative Redemption Center. But in terms of, were you curious to dig into any one of these rules? This is a good location for the statutes and the rules that govern your business.
There's also a process for requesting changes in statute too, right? I mean, through
Mhm.
the agency process.
That's right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we do that in collaboration with the governor's office. If we had some legislative concepts that we wanted to advance, we would come up with some concepts and ideas of our own. And then in collaboration with the governor's office, see which ones that we had some agreement in advancing. And then we'd go through the legislative process to try to get those laws changed.
Thanks.
And then similarly, we'd have to come back and do the rules process. We'd have to adopt the rules at the commission level.
I think especially, well, I was speaking for myself as a new commissioner. I mean, where the statute ends and where the rule starts on any of these topics is where I'm kind of, still learning.
Yeah.
Where do I have discretion in
Mhm.
advocating for a change versus going through the legislative concept process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you'll notice that the statutes are written more broadly. And then the rules is sort of the art in how we interpret the application of those statutes, So there is a lot of gray in there. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, some, just for example, alcoholic liquors may be more broadly defined than, say, cannabis regulation, because that was done through voter initiative and they wanted specific things in there. So again, I don't know what those specific things are.
Mhm.
So figuring out where my scope is that's what I try to figure out.
Yeah.
It's probably almost ready. I mean, what I found is if there's a specific thing that you want to get done, I mean, if it was, I don't know, you wanted to change something with the, with the bottle bill specifically, you could look up the law, whereas what does the law say you have to do? And then look at the rule. Where's the rule in current existence in terms of what you want to, like, because, the law gives you bright line, and if you don't like the law, you can, if you want to take it upon yourself, you can go to legislature and ask them to change it or not. If it's just something in rule that you don't like, you can go and talk with the folks that are working on at the commission and see if it's something that they can change, why the rule is the way that it is. And then you got to notice it, you got to get the hearing, all that stuff. But it's, I guess, the process. It's just sort of knowing what bright lines were mandated to follow by law, and then figuring out if within rule what you want is doable just at the commission level. But then you got to get, the rest of the commission to vote for a rule change and have the whole process. So it's not like we have that much power, but it's just the power of being able to convene and make changes and understanding what's even possible at the commission level versus legislatively.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Anything else in there?
Yeah, other areas that are good for clarification. That was a great example of just providing some clarity over where to engage and how to engage at a high level. Obviously, there's a lot more details around some of those questions in terms of how you go about that process, but hopefully that gave you some inclination. Other resources about scope for commissioners that would be useful, because that was your original question, right? What are resources that help you better understand your role? So that was one, which was great. Anything else that you guys would suggest that's out there and available?
I just say it's like a case by case deal. I mean, that's the thing. It's just knowing who to ask, where to ask, how to get things done. Because again, it's just like all this stuff has a lot of precedent behind it. And Tara can be the conduit, but there's a lot of staff that has worked on a lot of these specific issues for years. And like she said, like, I mean, the bottle bill one is a perfect example, because if it's a real specific thing that you want to get accomplished, then the best thing you can do is go in as informed as you can be on what it is and what you want. And so that you can kind of direct staff of, yourself too, because, it's really hard to change things, what I found. And staff's got so much going on. So it's like the heavier lifting that the commissioners can do and have done to bring to staff. So they're not just having to do it all for the commission is kind of what I've found to be most helpful. I don't know if that's necessarily a resource, but it's my
It's
experience.
helpful.
I guess we'll get to run up against the bright lines in our next or second to next, the one after, topic about how to support the cannabis industry, because we can only function within what the statutes allow us to function within. But I think a lot of people would say that there are changes needed there and that something needs to be done. So figuring out where our boundaries are is going to be helpful.
Well, a lot of that stuff is federal, then you've got state law, and then you've got, by the time it gets to the commission, there's there's stuff that can be done, but it's very, I don't know. I mean, the challenge is you've got so many layers of government and differing issues that, you really have to really understand clearly like what the commission can actually do and can't do. And there's, it's there is a lot of stuff it can do, but it's just, you got to be really, and it's a little different than alcohol too, just because it's a more complex deal. So yeah, but there's there's specific stuff on cannabis. That's where I again go back to the specifics. If it's a specific issue, that's the way I found how is like, is it something the commission can even address first? And if it's not, sometimes it's not even worth having the conversation, or it's just better to connect them with who can help them at the agency or where to direct them. Because, and that's a frustration I think too that folks have, is that the commission can't solve all their problems. But it's the place they probably interface with the most. So yeah, it's tough. Was there a specific cannabis issue you had, or?
No, I didn't, nothing specific. I mean, so when we have that conversation about cannabis, I mean, I think in all these cases, I'm never going to know the statute and rules nearly as well as staff do, because they're doing this every day. So I'll rely on them to tell us where our discretion is. And so I don't have any specific policy recommendations for the cannabis area, I think. But I do want to hear what staff think that we can and should do.
So maybe after Rich's presentation, when we get into that topic, maybe there are specific things you can say, we'd like to know more about these 3 things. And then the staff can plan to get that information at future meetings, right? So that'd be a good use of that conversation after you hear Rich's presentation. You were going to add something?
No.
Oh. Other things about roles, boundaries, expectations that have maybe not been clear that you want to use this opportunity to get clarity around? So we talked about how do we get a topic on the agenda? We talked about various ways to do that. I had said some things up there, are there criteria that, will be transparent for everybody to know what gets on, what doesn't? We want everybody on the commission to feel comfortable bringing up those topics.
Okay, I'm gonna get way in the weeds on this. No, we had talked about the fact that we have not adopted that we as a commission are gonna use Robert's rules or a hybrid of that. Do you guys remember this conversation? And I think we had said we were gonna talk about it at the retreat. Or I might have been just wanting to talk about it at the retreat. But I don't know where people are on that or where we have that conversation. I thought our DOJ attorney did a great job of explaining how people can use it to control and kind of beat up on someone, if you will. So I don't want that level of it, but just I kind of assume we were using it just by the way we move motions forward and so forth. So I would love that. Maybe just a discussion about what a hybrid or a pared down version or what we all agreed to.
But we can decide how we want to operate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So that might be something, not that we do here, but that
yeah. Let's-
leadership takes a look at and then can bring back for
Yeah,
a discussion.
yeah.
So you're looking for a recommendation on a hybrid approach.
I think so. I know, when I'm like, you're not supposed to make a motion and then talk about the I didn't really say that, I just thought it. And then it's like, oh, we aren't using Robert's rules. Okay, do whatever. Go ahead.
Mhm. I think you said that one time.
I didn't say it out front.
Wait, no, not out front, but I remember doing it because we don't have a lot of structure in certain, I mean, at least at the meetings. So I remember you saying that though. And I remember thinking, oh God, if we're gonna have to do that, I'm gonna have no clue.
Don't do that again, or Alicia will call you out. That's what I want. I want them to be afraid of me. That's
Mhm.
my goal.
Yeah.
No, I think it runs really smoothly. So, it's that delicate, I don't want to throw a wrench in this whole thing by becoming a little too restrictive. So that's why I think just that we all agree that we're gonna, that we're all good with motion, second, speak to
Right,
the motion, or some of those, not as deep as how do you, I call the question and I need 3, 4, whatever percent. And
Yeah.
I'm not there, but I think just some of that clarity.
Well,
Go ahead. I think it's been going smoothly, but I hear your voice. That having more structure around how we do it might be beneficial. Yeah,
The roll call vote, that surprised me. I had to pay attention. I knew who I was before, after, and then she left the commission, and now I gotta pay attention. It's Mary Ellen. But that you will do roll call votes, that we will do moves and seconded and, read some of the nuances. We need you to not just say, I move that we do the, whatever, but that you give a full detail of what you're making a motion on.
right.
And usually that's very helpful. It's written out. I don't know, just some of those little things that I think will help also new commissioners.
Yeah.
Maybe not the commissioners who are here, but if they're a new commissioner.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's have this discussion. And so you wake up when Mary Ellen it was called. Yeah. All right. And then, specifically what you want to see, we'll have that discussion. Make sure we do it. Yeah. Okay.
Other comments on the Robert's rules or other opinions about it? Everybody on board that having everybody have an expectation that's the same and maybe documented somewhere would be good? And you can hand that out for any new commissioners that come in. They can enter playing by the same rules. Okay, so we took that as an action.
So what is the next step on this?
We're going to have scheduled a discussion on this with all the commission about how we want to proceed forward. We've done this before. I think we never had to have a second, and somebody brought it in that you're supposed to have a second on this. And so then we moved to that. I was told when I got there that, because I kept seconding the thing, and Paul said, no, we don't need a second. I second. I said, okay. So,
Take away my power. Yeah.
well, that was what I was used to. I don't think it was strict Robert rules, but on other boards. I mean, it was not a government board, so they're much more relaxed.
But I think our DOJ attorney was good. I think she's probably got some hybrid.
Yeah.
Pared down version
Yeah.
of what we can use.
Yeah, maybe we chat with her and
So the question would be, right, if we bring up what she proposed, does everybody feel like
Yeah.
just go with that?
Yeah.
Or do you want to make any modifications
you
to
okay
it?
with that? And just asking,
Yeah, I think if she brings it and then people can take a look and then we can modify it,
yeah,
and then as a group, all agree to it,
Yeah.
vote on it with the second, no, or
oh my God.
without objection, we all
Uh,
agree.
Are you gonna have notes that you're gonna share with me
Yeah,
afterwards?
so that'll just be at an upcoming commission meeting, you would do that. have that agenda topic,
Yeah.
is what you're saying, is the next step.
That's what you want.
That works for everybody else. And now I'm getting in my, does it look bad that we have that discussion in public? No. I think if she brings them and we all say, and we've got new people on the commission and we all just want to make sure we're playing, we're using the
Okay.
same rules.
We can do that in an education session that it doesn't have to be out in the public.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever
Yeah.
you
Let's
feel
do-
is best.
So you guys will make a choice and get it done one way or the other.
Yeah.
I'm good, however you choose, just so long as we get to do it. And I get to be judgmental.
Yes. Yes. We can count on you, I'm sure.
Other role clarifications, rules of the game, things that people are unclear on. I know we talked about the communication thing already, right? When in doubt, run through the PIO. Don't respond to inquiries. Nothing else. All right. You get your break earlier and Rich is going to be back as well. So let's come back at 10 till. That'll be our break before.
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, it's.
Okay. Let's make sure, yeah, that mic is on. And we have Rich here for his presentation.
I asked the director to leave, so she's leaving. Thank you. So, for the record, Rich Evans, Director of Public Safety. One of the things that I wanted to do today is not kill you with a PowerPoint, but kind of give a couple of things in this hour. I think the Public Safety Division at OLCC is a lot larger than what you would even imagine, and we do a lot of things that nobody really even knows about, and I wanted to go through that. But one of the questions I was asked to answer today is, what do I do in my role? And obviously, I coordinate all these divisions for one single outcome for citizens of Oregon and the state of Oregon. But there's also a question of the differences between alcohol and marijuana. Thank you, Laura Paul. The differences between alcohol and marijuana and the issues facing us. And I really think the differences, you've heard a few of those already, and the issues facing us, I think are going to be extremely important for us to discuss. So if you look at the first page, you'll see that we, in the Public Safety Division, we have liquor licensing, liquor compliance, bottle bill, rec marijuana licensing, rec marijuana compliance, medical marijuana compliance, admin hearings, marijuana analytics team, labs and labeling, hemp, the marijuana call center, which you probably don't know anything about, and then we have a policy and health. All those divisions are underneath me here at OLCC. It's about 70% of the agency when you look at the numbers. Between the warehouse, that's where another big majority of the employees are. So you flip the page to liquor licensing. One of the things I learned is that I taught police officers for a long time that if I don't give them the numbers, they write them down, they actually remember them. So there's places where there's not the number. But if you look at liquor licensing, we have staff, there are 17,128 annual licenses that need to be serviced, reviewed, and worked on every year. And out of those, we have an additional 10,567 special licenses, or folks that use the temporary use of their annual license, which if you look, that's 27,000 different customers that we serve in the licensing side on liquor every year. There is 163,818 active service permits. So if you think
Slow down, I can't do math.
163,818 service permits, where those are people that are serving alcohol in a licensed establishment in Oregon. So if you think about the impact of those jobs and how we issue those licenses, just the liquor licensing alone, you can see the impact that we have in Oregon. Those Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So some of those people aren't working, but they have active licenses. That's what we have. Yeah, a lot of people. You have one? Yep, a lot of people have them. So liquor compliance. At the back of this packet, you will see two stat pages. One is for the Public Safety Division for the entire calendar year of 25. And then you'll also see a document that is through August. And so I'll be referencing some of that. So liquor compliance, what are our inspectors doing? They complaints, they investigated 6,420 complaints in the calendar year last year. They completed 1,455 minor decoy operations throughout Oregon. If you think about that, that is a lot of minor decoy operations. So we take the service to minors very seriously, and we do that work as a priority.
So
In alcohol alone. Man hours, so you have to, each decoy takes, so what we will do is we'll take a team out. We can do, 6, 7, 8 a night, but it is basically an hour to an hour and a half on every store when we're doing those. Because so on a typical minor decoy operation, we have a minimum, since we have a minor decoy that's 18, over 18, but under 21. We have a minimum of 2 staff, but it's usually 3 or 4 staff because one person's usually in the store watching the minor buy the alcohol, somebody's outside. I added one slide there for a priority for us. And if you think about it in liquor compliance, it's over service and visibly intoxicated persons, VIPs is the term, because what you see in public safety is intoxicated people, over service people end up driving, causing crashes. And I was a police officer, for 30 years. Every domestic I went to, 98% of the people were intoxicated. It spills out into the streets. It spills out into domestics, thefts, car burglaries, all kinds of things. So that is our priority. And the liquor compliance is licensees that are over serving patrons. So I know I'm going fast because I want to get to the good stuff. Bottle bill. What you recognize is we have 2 people in the bottle bill, but the bottle bill folks, and I know that we've talked a little bit about this when Commissioner Chowry was here, but we investigate complaints. So we do get a considerable amount of complaints on the bottle bill where a location is not taking cans back. And so that's the number one complaint. We actually have advocates out there that will go out and take cans back just to see if somebody will take a can back and then report them to OLCC. So we have folks out there doing that. Complaints have risen in the last few years. I think the commission's well aware of the downtown issue, Portland issues with folks stealing cases of water, pouring the water out, and then taking the bottles right back in the store to redeem the bottles. There were 2 stores that the governor allowed not to take back cans in downtown Portland due to these issues, social issues. And then we also heard a little bit about the approval of a redemption center. The director actually approves a siting of a redemption center. We get an application from a community, and once the community application comes in, the approval lies with Director Wasiak. There's a lot of feedback. The St. John's neighborhood was a Delta Park was closing and they wanted to move it to St. John's, and that created quite a firestorm for us as commissioners and other folks. Right now, they're in the process of citing an alternate redemption center, which is similar, basically the People's Depot, which is under a bridge right now, to another permanent location. And so that application will be coming in and staff will be working through that. So bottle bill is a lot more than I think people think what we do. We do have the highest return rate in the country on cans. We're the most efficient bottle bill program in the country, first and efficient. So I'm proud of that. We'll go to recreational marijuana licensing next. There are 7, I wrote these down, 771 retailers, 1,362 producers, which is the number that is very important, the producers having 1,362. 278 processors, 245 wholesalers for 2,666 total licensees. We have around 20,000 worker permits in the marijuana industry. Same with service permits. We also do promotional events. This is also annual licensing, so it's every year that we're working through these. But one of the issues I'll talk about later is change of location and change of ownership in the marijuana industry in those applications that we're receiving. Marijuana compliance, we had 3,396 complaints in the calendar year of 2025. We did and completed 702 minor decoy operations in the marijuana industry. The marijuana industry has a very, very high compliance rate for minor decoy operations. We're up to 93% right now, which is exceptional. If you look at a compliance program, alcohol is at 78, and we're going to talk about that later, 78%. Marijuana is leading the way, and they do a very good job, and they take it very seriously. You got to give credit to the industry on that one. They realize what that appearance would be, and they take that very seriously. We also have staff that work in medical marijuana compliance. We do not license medical marijuana locations. The Oregon Health Authority does. But there are rules that if a person grows for 3 or more patients, they must be tracked in the seed to sale tracking system, which is metric. And then they would fall underneath OLCC's investigative, basically authority, and we do compliance checks. When the medical marijuana program was first told to us by OHA, there were over 20,000 licensees or permittees in their registration in their program. They can voluntarily report on whether they have 3 or more patients. We started out with about 2,000 folks to be tracked, and we lose members every month. Every month it goes down. We are now at 113 credentialed sites. We had authority for 12 employees, and I'm down to 2 employees or 3 employees, and we'll be down to 2 employees doing that work statewide by January 1st due to lack of people in the program.
Fine.
Mm-hmm. So the client, so when OHA first told us, they said, we have 20,000 people that have medical marijuana growing permits, licenses. What happened was the licensees get to self-declare how many plants they have. And if they have 3 or more or grow for 3 or more patients, they have to be registered in seed to sale and then fall under OLCC's authority. So we started out around the 2,000 mark, and we're down to 113 as of today. So they're frankly either not declaring how many plants they have, or medical marijuana is just kind of going away since the recreational market.
That's the actual recipient of the.
Correct.
plant.
They grow for the plant. Yes, they can bring some marijuana into the rec system, but it's capped and it's very little. So it's basically growing directly for a patient.
Got it.
But we do that work.
Are you saying the decline is because of both of those issues that you just said?
I think so. Both issues of people that are declaring less or more plants. And then the real need is if you want marijuana, you can go down to, frankly, a store in your neighborhood and purchase it. So that program has kind of just over time dropped off. There are obviously still some advocates, and there are higher dose products that they can get with medical cards and things like that, pay no taxes. But basically what I'm seeing is a pretty strong decline in how many people are growing for medical patients in Oregon. Administrative Hearings Division, you get to work with those folks at the monthly commission meetings. In 2024, there were 630 compliance cases where they filed official charges and then issued 271 final orders in 2024. You only see a few. Most of these orders are settled outside of your purview, but the number of compliance cases continues to rise. Another team you probably do not know about is the marijuana analytics team. They're a team of 4 people that work inside the metric or seed to sale tracking system. They help licensees with the seed to sale tracking system. Alone in 2025, they issued 8,680 warnings to folks by email. We talk about how OLCC often, all you hear is that we are so strict and we always write violations. This group alone warned 8,680 licensees on violations, and they conducted 1,279 audits. So they are looking into the seed to sale tracking system to make sure that the numbers are correct. And if there's any abnormalities, and they're analyzing the data with inside the seed to sale tracking system. They also create SQL-based inquiries that will pull data from the seed to sale tracking system so we can find abnormalities of folks that grow a certain amount of marijuana and how much of that marijuana will actually make it to the marketplace. We look for abnormalities, or how much, if they waste too much marijuana out, like they grow a crop and they waste 80% of the marijuana out and say it was moldy, or and then it just disappears out of the system. They analyze all that work for us and send compliance cases.
8,000 of the 8,680 warning
Mhm.
via email, is there a pattern?
No, so a lot of those are metric errors, or taking a package or doing a metric transaction that is against the rules. And so it's a simple correction and a warning to say, hey, you can't do that. Or, I think you meant to put 5 pounds in here, but you put 5,000 pounds in here. It's correcting the system so that the data of how much marijuana is in the system is actually accurate. So they're kind of our internal control is how I'd look at it. Labs and labeling is next. All products sold in our marijuana retail license stores have to have a proper labeling. There are labs that we license also, so they test for pesticides and all the human safety factors, and then they have to have a label approved. So we have staff that do all of that work and approve the labels, do recalls when pesticide numbers are too high, or THC content doesn't match the label of the product, things like that. Child safety, we do get calls from Poison Control Center about overdoses or children that come into contact with marijuana, and this is the group that really works on that, and we try to be responsive with that. By testing it through the labs. We do some testing.
We use independent.
So we have a lab through the Oregon Health Authority that just started in the last year. It's called a reference lab. And we now have the ability to test products through the OHA. And what we look for is, you've heard some of the lab issues where a product is way too high a THC and it's not accurate keefing. Yes, ma'am. Very good. And so we have those type of cases, but we can send a product to be tested at our independent lab so that they don't have too much THC per serving in like an edible, or we can test for heavy metals or things like that. So we do have a reference lab. We have one staff at OLCC that works with a reference lab to coordinate all that testing back and forth. Hemp, there's going to be a big discussion about hemp at the end. There is hemp in Oregon. Lots of hemp products effective January 1st. All hemp products sold in Oregon for human or animal consumption must be registered through the OLCC. Also the label has to be approved. So you will see the same type of labels on hemp products in Oregon as you will the recreational marijuana products. What you have to remember in hemp is that they can contain THC, and some of those doses are dependent upon the size of the product. OLCC does investigate some complaints from hemp where hemp products contain too much THC. If you remember the presentation by David Standiford and Stephen Crowley, we purchased 150 items and all of those had excess of THC in those hemp products. Now those products, if they're sold in Oregon, will have to be tested and labeled, which goes to the public health side of things, making sure that people know what they're taking is actually what is in there. But we also still get complaints on hemp products that are legal. They have the low amount of THC where people become impaired or didn't expect to buy that product, or there's some issues with that. So yeah, that dog food, hemp dog food, pet food, there's lots of hemp CBD. So CBD is if it's derived from cannabis, can be labeled. So there's lots of those products out there also. I know I'm going fast because I want to talk about the big stuff at the end. We also have policy and education underneath this. If you've ever heard Amanda Borup speak or Nicole Blase on rules, and then Stephen Crowley's in this group now. Basically, they do the the rules coordination, which is a big process now, legislative analysis of bills and what we need to do and how to implement them. Every session, OLCC gets a series of bills that need to be implemented. They track the implementation, which sometimes is rules, sometimes it's changing internal processes and policies to make sure we're following it. And then they give technical support to the industry and other folks, other state agencies on how our rules work. We're very intertwined between the Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Agriculture on a lot of products. Sometimes they may have a testing rule, they have some control over hemp, and so all of our rules have to mesh together, and they do that. Another group that we have is the Marijuana Call Center. This is an externally focused one-stop shopping on marijuana issues is the way to explain it. When marijuana became legal, nobody knew who to call or who would answer their questions or who actually had authority. And so we put together a call center, and the call center basically is for law enforcement 24/7. You'll think that's kind of weird. And then other folks, we get calls from law enforcement all across the country, and we get lots of calls from folks in the industry and out of the industry. Hey, my neighbor has a marijuana grow going on. He just came in. Is it licensed? Who is it? How can they be there? They answer all these calls. So if you look into they're our staff. We have 5 people in the call center. In 25, they took 1,023 phone calls. They answered 7,721 emails. They returned 3,121 inquiries to law enforcement. Think about that, 3,121 inquiries where a police officer on the street ran into something, or somebody in North Carolina stopped a licensee and they're like, we're calling OLCC. And we respond to those calls for service to tell them whether they can legally have the marijuana, if they're a licensee, or assist them in an investigation. In August of 25, I'm going to talk about this topic of illegal activity going up. We responded to 322 calls from law enforcement in the month of August alone at the call center. Public Safety Division, I just kind of gave you the summary. It's what we do, the work we do. On the back, you'll find a monthly summary of stats. You'll find the 2025 year and then summary, and then the monthly summary through August of 2025. And so those stats are there and we collect those, and that's how we monitor some of the work and where I got some of the numbers. But there's a lot, I guess my point is to you is that we have a lot of things going on and we're really busy. You know, you think about all the 1-year renewals on all those thousands of licenses and all the contacts that we have to make and the emails we have to answer. We are extremely busy. And at the same time, we've been implementing CAMP. And I think you probably heard that acumen before, but it's basically a new way of doing business, electronically licensed compliance AHD in the Public Safety Division. We are on phase 4. We will finish that in December, but literally I have people assigned to do that full time outside of their normal job to make sure that we do that correctly and automating all of our systems. So we have been extremely busy, just like Lisa's crew, trying to run the warehouse at the same time, building a new system. Our staff has done an exceptional job of doing all of this stuff at the same time. And the numbers, I will tell you, minor decoy numbers will be down this year as a direct result of the implementation of CAMP, which in the long run will save us time and money. So that's kind of what public safety is. My job is to manage all of that. And keep everything aligned externally and internally. I do a lot of work with law enforcement. I do a lot of work with the industry on both sides and trying to listen, make changes, you know, be proactive in customer service. But for lack of better terms, that's kind of my envelope of what I do at the OLCC. I'm proud of the crew that we have working. As Tara said, we have a lot of great people, but we do a lot of work I don't think anybody even recognizes that we do in public safety, and we're extremely busy. Now into the differences of alcohol and cannabis, and it's striking, to be honest with you. The first thing is that alcohol regulations have been in place in 1933. there are some documents laying around OLCC that talk about what the inspectors did back in the 40s and 50s. And they chased stills around, they chased bootleggers around, people selling alcohol at weird hours of the night illegally. It's almost wild, wild west in the 40s and 50s. They were armed. They talk about, all these stings and driving their cars around at night, chasing people. It really didn't, prohibition ended, but that didn't still end the liquor. And if you look at the history, it's kind of in the last basically 100 years, it really has gotten to a point where there's nothing new in liquor, really. It's pretty static. We may have some new twist to something, but liquor is liquor. And we don't have any changes really in licensing and on compliance. It's really the same thing. I don't have to worry about innovation, rule changes. There's really a few things that change. So my business side of my work, if you looked at me directly, I'm probably 85% marijuana and 15% alcohol, just because not everything's static on that side. So that's the number one thing. The other thing that people always forget, when you'll hear the businesses say, we want to be treated just like alcohol. Marijuana folks would say that. Well, marijuana is still a Schedule I controlled substance with the federal government. So it can't even cross the state line. So there is a big difference there that we tend to not remember. And even if there's talk about descheduling it, it would probably drop to a Schedule III, which would still make it a controlled substance. That would put it on the same level as like Vicodin, Percocet, things like that, drugs like that. So it's not like it's magically going to be able to be sent all over the place as a Schedule III substance. There's no three-tiered system in alcohol. The successful folks are integrated, so you don't have levels of control that you do on the alcohol side for sure. So somebody could have a producer license, a processor license, a wholesaler license, and a retailer license and never have to work with anybody else but their own business. They can basically streamline the process. The folks that got into that at the very beginning are probably the most successful. They don't have to rely on other entities. And then another striking big difference, and Matt brought this up the other day, is there's no cash on delivery. A lot of the business in the marijuana industry is on terms, and some of those terms are 6-month terms, 3-month terms, 9-month terms. If folks are a producer and they want to get into a certain store and get certain shelf space, they're almost required to do that type of business just to get in the stores. And that is difficult, as you know, as a business leader, as you guys are, that your money's sitting out there